Well, hello, and welcome back. This little tutorial is going to be focused a little bit more on some of the selection tools that we are starting to explore. As you know, we have a rectangle selection here, rectangle to alpha. That's the alpha channel. So when you make a selection like this, it is going into the alpha channel. You can see the selection menu here and actually see all sorts of things referenced as alpha. The clear alpha will clear the entire alpha channel, and that's where the selection used to be. Let's say you paint something here, and then you go to the selection tool and make a rectangular selection. You could do a couple of things with that. For instance, you could right click on the erase tool and say clear the selected to primary. That's the primary color. Now the primary color, I'm going to make it reddish and erase right here. Oops, that's the right click on the alpha. That's, by the way, another thing you can use if you want these tools handy without going to the menu, right? I mean, you've got the selection here, all of these tools. You can also expect to see them when you right click on these alpha tools, right? So that's a good way to quickly get something like I don't know, clear alpha going there. And so I'm going to right click on the erase tool and erase to the primary, so it erases only that selection, only the content of that selection. So that's something really useful to know if for instance you use the lasso tool and let's go and erase clear alpha. Let's say you have a picture of some character there and you're tracing it, and it's a ghost or something, right? And you're tracing it, and now you want to erase that or fill it in a color. You select the color, let's say light green, and you go and right click here and select clear selected to primary, so you get a green ghost. If you want to do some other effects, there are some selection effects. You can do a drop shadow on that. It could be on the inside or on the outside. You see it here on the inside. Do it on the outside. There are a couple of other things you might want to do instead. Perhaps let's say erase emboss by alpha. That's another cool one too, and that will give you a little bit of an embossed look to that. Now, all right, so that's a very brief start on working with the selection masks, and I'm going to clear the alpha and now show something specific. You may have seen on the website we're experimenting with a slightly different look on the menus and the interface, and in particular we had this icon here changed. It was basically our logo, and you know, most of the pages, and some of these are old and really in need of change. Many of them though, you'll see the icon that when you click on, it brings you back to the main page, and so you could go into demos. You could go and find it here. Now here you can't really tell if it's a round icon or if it's a square icon, because if it's white but it's on white background, you can't really tell. But you would see it as a rectangle or a square box when you go back to this way here, because you have a gray background, and so that would definitely look odd if you had it in a box that's white. And what we wanted to do is show a little tutorial here on how to turn this into a round box background. So for instance, if I look at this one, I right click and I do a view image, we can see which image it's actually using. And I know I have a couple of others here, perhaps some bigger ones. Let me go actually do this. I'm going to go to the front there, this one, and view that one, view image. This one's already the one with the transparency, but it's not showing it when you view just a single image. It's just showing the whole image in that case. But I have a bigger one. I'm going to the 300 by 300 here, and make sure I got the dot here. Okay, so I'm going to capture that in my let's say with Irfan View, for instance, or just print screen, right? You could go click this and then hit print screen, and then perhaps you put it into an image viewer, and that would be like this, and then maybe we can select that and crop to that. So Control X to click to crop. So let's say we have this image here, right? And we really would like to have the sort of a bubble, a circular round shape around it, and everything around it leave that transparent, so that we only have the inside of the circle filled. Right, so let's see how to do that. What I'm going to do first is Control C this, so copy this into the clipboard. Right, so whatever tools you used before. It's now in the clipboard. That image could also be loaded perhaps from opening it from a file if you have an image on a file. But in my case here, I'll just do a Control-V to paste it right in there, and it sees the image in the clipboard and asks you, do you want to paste it into the current placeholder, the current image we have here? No, I'd like to actually have it here as in a new image. So the only thing we have is that image, and it will dump the old image, and there we go. All right, so first thing I'll need to do is keep a safe copy here on the image, store image, have a little copy that I can quickly get back to. And in fact, the next thing I'll do is I'll crop to just a white box. I don't need this black or dark gray around it. And one way to select that is with the magic wand. And then click on, well, there's a couple of ways we could click on that. We could click on the gray, dark black area, and that will actually not select it all. There must be some granularity. It's probably no, it was a PNG image, but the background was probably, maybe if we give it some tolerance, it will go out. There you go. If we give it some tolerance or anti-alias, let's see. Yeah, no, it does need a little bit tolerance. So I guess that means there are some gray values. There's some granularity. Yeah, and you can see it if you zoom in. You can see definitely that it's not all, like if you click here without tolerance, you can see how it will find some dark colors, but they're not all the same darkness. So that's why the selection with the magic wand needs a little bit of tolerance to allow going out beyond, right? And so when you do that, you end up getting this band all around the white box. And what you do next is you invert it, and when you invert it, you end up getting typically this part, but in this case it also finds something outside, probably because of the anti-aliasing mode. So you know what, I'm gonna do this much simpler. What I'll do is I'll just let's Control D, let's do the selection on the inside. So this is all white, right? And now there's some parts here didn't select, but I can crop to that, and it will crop just to the entire box here, because it won't crop out the parts inside. It will just find the most, like the common denominator, the bounding box of your current selection, right? And so when I do that, I crop to selection, I'm left with just that inside of the box. No more alpha channel, no more selection mask here. In case of that, I can always do a Control D to clear alpha, or do that here. All right, so that's the one I want to store and work with from now on. And I don't need this one anymore. Let's close that and keep this. Don't worry about the aspect ratio. I mean, if you make it very wide or very tall, it will change that. It still has that full set of pixels that you have here. Now, how many pixels is that? We can go to the image menu and look under image info and find it's 291 by 291. That's not a very good number to work with. You know, it's good to have even numbers when you do something like this, when you work with a picture that's ultimately going to be maybe 150 by 150. Make it 300. Let's resample this. Let's go image, resample, and bring it up to 300. You could constrain it since it's already square and say I want it 300 by 300. Let's make it the best possible quality by cubic interpolation. Okay, that, and there we go. So that's the one we're going to store. All right, so that's the one we'll keep. And now what we'll want to do, let me right click with the shift and the control key down here to zoom in a little bit. And or I can bring it to the edge of the window. There you go. Zooming it to the max to fit that screen. And what I'll do is I want to now create a selection mask, basically a round selection. So I use this oval selection tool, or ellipse to alpha, and I want to grab the middle somewhere here and then start drawing this or selecting, right? Now, did I really pick the middle, and do I need to? Well, maybe not. This may be good enough, but what if you did it? So Control D to clear the alpha, and let's go look for some of the assistant tools here. There's layers, there's info, I can close that. Let's go and close the colors for now. So down here, or we can scroll down to it. Let's keep the colors open, but we can scroll down and we can see that there's a grids section here in the tools on the right side there. So on the grids, you'll see that you can enable the visible grid, or you can another thing, you can open the artist guide, and I find that really useful. The artist guide, even in a just 2x2 layout, you can see where the middle of the picture is, And so with that, you can just click here with your oval or ellipse selection tool. You can start from here. That will be the middle of your ellipse, the center of it, and that will be close enough to get it to the middle. And then so when you look at the left or the right side here, as you go sideways, it's going to come close. And then you go up and you look at the top and the bottom, and it's going to come close by about the same amount. But you know, it might not be the exact place, so just, you know, give it a little bit of a margin. No need to be greedy here. That's probably good. All right, and let go. Now, there's another way to see your selection, not just the marching ants that you see here, that shows the transition at 50% selection, where it's going from selected on the inside to not selected on the outside. In fact, let me turn the grid, the artist guides off here, and one thing we'll do is we'll take a look at the selection, restore it, restore alpha, and that will give us a copy or a look at the selection. And we see a little bit of black borders around it. That's all good. All right, so one thing we want to do is perhaps make it a little bit smaller, shrink it a little bit. So we can go to the selection tool and grow alpha, shrink alpha, there it is. Select that and say by maybe 1-2 pixels. Let's do that. You can actually go up to like 16 pixels smaller. So it's going to go to the inside by 2 pixels, and then you get a little bit more margin here and here. And let's see what else could we do here. We could show the distinguish between the selected part and the non-selected part. And by the way, after I shrunk this, I made that selection smaller, I may want to store that one as well. All right. So I have now 2 copies. I have one before and one after shrinking it. And or if I didn't want that, I could just work with this one copy here and just say get the alpha. And so now you have the smaller, the newer, latest version right in here. And let's say if I want to see the alpha as is, the selected part, and then anything that's not selected I want to dim, or I want to make it kind of a pinkish color. You can do that too. That's under the selection mask. It's called overlay alpha. And then so when you select that, it will show you an overlay color. It will basically give it like a tinted appearance in there. And so that's a good way to also see where your selections are. It's particularly good if you do some blurring. If you do selection, let's say Gaussian blur or box filter alpha. Let's do the Gaussian blur. When you do that, it's going to show you a blurred transition on that pink. So that gives you a better idea of how crisp that selection is. And that's, you know, that's one thing to remember with selections. It's not a do or die thing. It's not all or nothing necessarily. You can do selections like this one. It is here. It's everything is selected, fully selected, and outside it's fully not selected, right? Well, you can make that a selection that gradually transitions. And so pixels in this area are somewhat selected, but not 100%. Out here they're selected 100%, but in here they're not selected. That's at 0%, and then here they're selected at 100%. But somewhere in between it's a transition, right? So what you see here with the marching ants, that essentially is indicating where the 50% is, where the transition has reached 50%. Halfway selected or not selected. It's like it's a glass half full or a half empty, right? This is exactly where the transition is. All right, so I'm going to actually give it a little bit of Gaussian blur, something like this, and okay that. All right, and then so now the question is, well, how do I save this as an image in which the selected part here is opaque and will show me the colors that we have in it, and then the parts behind it on the outside are going to be flagged as transparent. This is basically the selection mask that we want to use. And what we do is we simply save it in a 32-bit Targa format, or a TIFF format, or a PNG format, or a couple of others. So what you can do is you can go here to the File menu and save it. And when you have that save dialog, what you want to look at is pay attention to the format, because some of the formats will not save the alpha channel. Right, when you look at this, you got, for instance, the JPEG format, very popular for digital photography, but that's not going to save the alpha. It's only RGB, 24-bit. And whereas BMP can, and our default format definitely gives you, in fact, it gives you a dialog. All of these others will save it to the format with the alpha channel if it can. PNG does, Targa does, TIFF does, but it will automatically select that if it sees that there is an alpha channel selection. So it has some information there that we call the alpha bit that says whether any sort of selection was created. And if it has that, it will actually save it in 32-bit, therefore keeping the alpha channel information. But if it doesn't, it will be 24-bit. Here, our default Targa selection will actually ask you in what format do you want to save it, right? So I'm going to go, let's go up one level, daily dose. Where's my selections? There, I'm going to save it in here, and it's going to be logo 1, masked, and it will be a Targa format. And because I chose the default Targa, it will ask me exactly in what format do I want it, what color depth, right? So I can actually save it in a couple of different depths. Even if I have an alpha selection, it doesn't necessarily mean this save here needs to use it. But if I want it, if I don't want to just save RGB, I want what's called RGBA, and RGBA is the red, green, blue, and alpha channel, and that's a 32-bit. Right? And so when I save it that way, I will have that entire mask in addition to the colors. Now the colors back here are white, just as they are, and that's going to be saved like that, but the mask is going to indicate to other applications later on when you load that into a website or into another image program or an animation program. It will indicate that you should treat this as transparent. So now we can do another thing here too. Instead of working with this entire image like that, we can actually pick it up as a brush. So we have a selection mask here, and we can go to the brush image, to the brush menu, and say use selected as brush. Right, and then so that now I actually have, with the preview enabled here and the opacity high enough to actually see it, I can see that I have that in my brush. I can store the brush just like I can store an image or the selection. This is a stored alpha, this is a stored brush, this is a stored image. Right? All of these have a store capability to temporarily store it in memory. Store image, store and manage on the brush menu, and selection has a store alpha. That's what we did to get this. But what's interesting with the in the case of the menu of the brush is that not only can we store it, we can also manage it here, and we can see how many images are actually in that. If you did show film strip, that's that here, hide film strip. You can have animated brushes. This one is not. This one is just one image in it. But one thing you can do also is change, like rotate it. You can see scale and rotate here. You can make it bigger or smaller, or you could go and say rotate it a little bit and have it at exactly 90 degrees. Click that a few times until you get to exactly 90 degrees. There you go. And then so when you, this is the original here is showing, but here is how it's being used. So it's actually rotated in my current active brush. Right, so the nice thing is you can always go back to resetting it to what the image has here. You can say restore, and that will restore it back to the original brush. Well, not exactly here. I guess it means particularly on the size. I don't know, maybe there's a bug there. But the thing is, you can go and change the size of that, and then you have a smaller one. And you can have it also change dynamically as you paint. You can go, that's the custom brush, right? So you want to allow custom brush transforms. And then you can say, for instance, if you want to have the angle rotate based on which way you're painting, and perhaps have that smoothed on top of that. It's not too jittery. All right, but we're going back now to the original, which is, let's say, to 0. There you go. And this one here at 100%. There. So we have the original here, and we'd like to save it as is with the transparent background that's in the brush. So the brush, the custom brush, does have a 32-bit depth. It has RGB, 8-bit each, and then also another 8-bit for the alpha. And that's why it's transparent on the edge, right? So you can actually see what's already there. It's not clearing the whole rectangle. And So the question now is, how do we save it straight from the brush? You can actually do that right there from the brush menu. You can save it. Right, so that's going to go and do the same thing. You see in the same directory here, the one that I saved earlier. Well, I can actually save it here from the brush. Right, logo 1 from brush. And I can save it as Targa, same thing, or default Targa. Or I can save it in your format you'll probably use on the website in the end. So that would be on the brush menu here and say save. And then this time it will be still the same name, but I'm going to change it to, let's say, a PNG, right? And that will be logo from brush.png. Save that. So now we have an image that we can use inside a web page or inside an animation program, with the outside being transparent and only the inside of the logo, inside that round area, opaque and showing the actual colors. All right, well, thanks for watching. I hope this is not too confusing, and we'll be getting a lot more practice with this. We'll do a lot more exercises working with the selection mask to create a lot more sophisticated elements with that. Thanks for watching.